Midday in Decatur, Georgia. Sunlight spilt in pale gold streaks through a thin veil of clouds, glinting off the old sign above a small street corner. Ellie's Grill. The neon flickered weakly. The first E had long since faded. Behind the windshield of a dusty black Chevy Silverado, a man sat quietly, watching the restaurant. He didn't get out right away. He just sat there, still. Marcus Hill, 42 years old, owns the restaurant chain named after his grandmother, Ellie Mae Hill, the woman who taught him how to cook, stay kind, and believe in people even when they fall. Every bowl of soup, every slice of cornbread at Ellie's Grill had once been a symbol of hope and warmth. But now, looking through the glass, he wasn't sure if that spirit still lived here. A faint breeze carried the smell of barbecue smoke and charred meat fat. That scent once comforted Marcus. Today it only made him feel hollow. He hadn't come to eat. He'd come to find the soul of this place, the one he feared he'd lost with his own hands. It had been a year since Marcus last set foot in one of his restaurants. He'd been buried in expansion meetings, contracts, reports, chasing growth while forgetting the laughter of diners, the sound of sizzling pans, the smell of fresh bread at dawn. "Let them run it," he used to say. "I trust my team." Lately, the warning signs have arrived. A few anonymous reviews, calls from old friends, whispers that Ellie's isn't Ellie's anymore. That sentence cut deeper than any financial report. Because Ellie's wasn't just a restaurant, it was a legacy, built by a woman who raised him with calloused hands and unshakable faith. Marcus opened the truck door, reached for a faded black hoodie and zipped it halfway up. Old jeans, scuffed sneakers, baseball cap pulled low. He looked at himself in the mirror. Gone was the successful businessman. What looked back was a man you could easily miss in a crowd. Exactly what he wanted. He stepped out, taking a deep breath. The air was thick with grease and cigarette smoke from nearby diners. Hands in pockets, head low, he strolled toward the door. The small brass bell chimed as he used to say, "Food is how you hug someone with flavor. If you forget that, no recipe in the world can save you." He swallowed hard as the line moved forward. "Next," Marina said flatly, not looking up. "I'll have the pulled pork sandwich and baked beans," Marcus replied. "Just that?" she asked, tapping the screen. Click, click, click. "Yeah, that's all." She took his cash and returned the change with detached fingers, already turning away before the moment even existed. Marcus stepped aside to wait, and then he heard it. Kendall leaned toward Marina, voice low but not low enough. "See that guy? That he's from that shelter up on Peachtree." Marina snorted, gum snapping between her teeth. "Yeah, those people never tip. Ever since the boss started hiring folks from those social programs, this place has gone downhill fast." Kendall smirked, shaking his head. "Heard the owner's some rich dude up in Buckhead. Black guy. Never shows up. Probably sipping green juice and counting his money." They both laughed. Marcus didn't move, not because they didn't recognize him, he expected that, but because they said it so casually, like it was normal. A cold sadness crept through him, not anger, just grief. He looked around. Customers waited, employees drifted. No warmth, no spark. Nothing of what Ellie's once stood for. He saw his grandmother again in memory, the small woman in the blue church dress, stirring soup in her old Macon kitchen, smiling down at him as a boy. "You can feed people good food, baby, but if you don't feed them respect, you ain't fed them at all." Her voice echoed in his head, soft, but heavy. Marcus walked back to the counter and said quietly, "Cancel my order." Kendall looked up, surprised. "You sure?" Yeah, Marcus said, voice calm. I just lost my appetite. He turned and walked out. The bell jingled again, this time like a tired goodbye. Marcus sat behind the wheel of his truck without starting the engine. His hands tapped absently on the steering wheel, lost in thought. The midday light hit his face, revealing deep, closed the compartment, and looked out again. Across the street, a man in a work jacket swept the sidewalk while a little girl ran after him, clutching a soda cup. They both smiled, something no one inside the diner had done. Marcus whispered to himself, voice steady now. It's not the restaurant that changed. It's that I let it drift away. He didn't start the truck. He just sat there, letting the silence do its work. The words he'd overheard still played in his mind, sharp and off-key. Since they started hiring from the shelter, this place went downhill. Black owner up in Buckhead. Each sentence felt like a blade, not because it insulted him, but because it betrayed the kindness Ellie's was built on. And then, in that quiet, something flickered behind his eyes. Not rage, but resolve. He knew what he had to do. Tomorrow, he would return, not in the hoodie, but in the suit. Not to punish, but to listen, to face the truth, and to save Ellie's soul. As the sun sank behind the buildings, Marcus still sat there. The neon light washed over his face, half bright, half shadow. He spoke softly, almost to the wind. Tomorrow, Grandma, I'll start watering the garden again. He turned the key and pulled away from the curb. Behind him, the sign of Ellie's grill flickered one last time, like it was waiting to be reborn. Marcus didn't drive home right away. He turned onto the corner gas station, bought a cheap cup of coffee, and leaned against the wall outside, watching people pass by. The coffee was bitter, burned, awful, but he finished it anyway. In his mind, the restaurant kept replaying like a film reel. What he'd seen earlier was only the surface. He could feel it. Something deeper was wrong behind those walls. He needed to find out what, not through reports or emails, but through his eyes and ears. Evening fell. The streetlights stretched long shadows across the damp pavement. Marcus tossed the paper cup into the trash, then circled the back of the building. There, a rusted steel door, the one employees used for smoke breaks, stood half open. He stopped, listening. Through the thin metal came the familiar rhythm of kitchen life. Knives hitting boards, the hiss of gas burners, the low hum of the fryer. Grease and cigarette smoke drifted out through the crack, mixing with the faint smell of rain. Above him, a small kitchen window had been left ajar. From there, voices spilt out, clear, careless. "The boss? Man, he ain't ever coming back," a young male voice, definitely Kendall, laughed. "And if he does, he'll show up in some fancy suit, act like he invented gumbo." Laughter burst out. Marcus froze. Then came another voice, female, sharp with mockery. "I call him Mr. Ghost Boss. His picture's on the wall, but has anyone actually seen him here?" More laughter. But suddenly another voice cut through. Deeper, rougher, and instantly recognizable. "That's enough." The knives stopped clattering. Marcus knew that voice. Reggie Coleman, head cook, the man Marcus had hired years ago after Reggie exited prison. Reggie's tone was calm but heavy. "You kids don't know. He started this place with $200 and a backyard grill. Anyone who was hungry, he fed. No one got turned away. Marina shot back, gum snapping between her teeth. Yeah? And where's he now? We're still here cooking while he vanished. Reggie replied, quiet, but untended, believing the roots were strong enough to survive alone. But culture doesn't maintain itself. It needs care, presence, reminder. He left the alley and strolled down the quiet street. Each step felt heavy, like walking through his own memories. Passing the front window, he glanced in one last time. Marina still chewed her gum. Kendall leaned against the counter. Reggie kept working in the kitchen. It looked like a painting of fatigue. People unaware that their boss was standing outside, watching them not with anger, but with the weary disappointment of a father. Marcus returned to his truck and sat in silence. He pulled a small notebook from his pocket. His pen trembled slightly as he began to write. Every detail, every line of dialogue, every expression. The page filled quickly. Atmosphere cold. No greetings. Cashier indifferent. Reggie still carries spirit. Staff meeting required. He closed the notebook and drew a long breath. The streetlight's glow split across the windshield, cutting his reflection in two. One half past, one half responsibility. Marcus took out his phone and typed a short message. All staff meeting, 9 a.m. tomorrow. Attendance mandatory. No exceptions. No emojis, no explanations. Just a command. Sharp enough to make hearts sink. He hit send, watched the message status turn delivered, then set the phone down. That night, he didn't go home. Instead, he rented a small room on the outskirts of Marietta. Inside the stillness, he opened his laptop, but it didn't work. He sat at the small desk, reopened his notebook and wrote, "No blame, no shouting. Must listen. Must help them remember why we exist." Outside, rain began to fall, tapping gently on the tin roof. Marcus looked at his reflection in the window and smiled faintly. "You'll see me there tomorrow, Grandma Ellie," he whispered. Not as the boss, but as the man learning to tend his own garden again. He closed the notebook, turned off the... The next morning, the Georgia sky was astonishingly clear. The day's first sunlight was soft and golden, spilling gently through the roadside trees. The air smelled of rain-soaked soil, fresh, calm, and clean. Marcus Hill had been awake long before dawn. He poured himself a mug of black coffee, no sugar, no cream, the kind he always drank when he needed complete clarity. On the table before him, last night's notebook still lay open. The words he'd written stood out, pressed deep into the page. No blame. Remind them why this place exists. He touched the tip of his pen to those words as if to ground himself in them. Today isn't about scolding. It's about awakening. He dressed simply, wearing a white shirt, a gray blazer, and leather shoes. Not the look of a powerful boss, but of the man who had once stood 12-hour shifts in Ellie's first kitchen, hands cracked from smoke and grease. Looking into the mirror, he saw the same eyes he once had, tired, but burning with resolve. The black Silverado rolled quietly down the misty road. Sunlight flickered through the treetops, scattering reflections across the windshield like small, hopeful greetings. No music, no radio. Only the steady hum of the engine and his heartbeat's measured rhythm. When Marcus pulled into the parking lot, the clock read 8:47 a.m. Before stepping out, he sat still for one last minute, drew a deep breath, and opened the door. The slam of metal echoed sharp and clear in the calm morning air. Through the restaurant's glass front, he could see movement inside, silhouettes crossing back and forth, employees arriving one by one. Reggie came first, with a key ring in hand and a large frame that was steady and deliberate. He unlocked the door, switched on the lights, and straightened the wall clock, a small ritual from a man who'd never been late a single morning. Then Tiana, the gentle server with the kind smile, carried a stack of order slips. Next, Charisse, the kitchen assistant, has an apron already dusted with flour. Kendall strolled in with earbuds on, chuckling at something on his phone. And last was Marina, late by a few minutes, coffee in hand, was watching him now. Reggie placed the keys down and cleared his throat, voice steady but respectful. "You're early this morning, boss." That broke the silence, only slightly. Marcus gave a slight nod, then faced them in a loose circle. "I won't keep you long," he began, his tone low but warm. "But I need to say a few things, and I want everyone to truly listen." He paused. Behind him on the wall hung the framed photograph of Ellie Mae Hill. The frame tilted slightly, dusty at the edges. Marcus stepped forward, straightened it carefully, then turned back. "This restaurant is named after my grandmother, Ellie Mae Hill," he said slowly. "She passed 15 years ago. But anyone who ever met her knew this place was never just a diner. It was a memory, a reflection of kindness." No one spoke. Only Tiana nodded gently, eyes glassy. "My grandmother fed people even when they couldn't pay," Marcus continued. "She believed no person is broken, only overlooked. And when I built Ellie's Grill, I wanted to keep that alive. A place where everyone is seen, respected, treated like human beings." Silence expanded, heavy but honest. Then his voice dropped lower. "But yesterday, I walked in here, and I didn't recognize what I had built." The words hung like a weight. Marina's nails scratched lightly against her cup. Kendall shifted back half a step. "I came in wearing an old hoodie and jeans. Sat right over there." He pointed to the corner by the counter. "And listened. I listened to two employees talk about their boss, customers, and this place's soul." A suffocating quiet filled the room. No names, but everyone knew. I heard mockery. I heard indifference. And I walked out, not out of anger, but to understand why. Why do the people carrying the name Ellie forget what it means? He inhaled deeply, voice now steady but firm. And I realized part of that blame is mine. I stopped showing up. I let my absence. Importantly, I am here at least twice a week. No more hiding. He looked around the room, the morning light now catching on their faces and on Ellie's picture behind him. If anyone doesn't want to stay, you're free to go. But if you do, I expect respect. For our guests, for each other, and for the woman whose name hangs on that wall. When he finished, he let his gaze settle on each of them. Marina's lips pressed tight. Kendall stared down, shoulders tense. Reggie nodded again, eyes warm. Tiana smiled faintly, as if something heavy inside her had just lifted. No one spoke, but everyone felt it. The air inside Ellie's grill had shifted. Not loud, not dramatic, just quietly real. In a few words, Marcus had reignited what they'd all forgotten: pride and purpose. He drew a long breath, voice low but resonant. "Today, we start over." Then he nodded once and stepped toward the kitchen door. The staff watched him go, waiting for what came next. At the doorway, Marcus stopped, turned his head slightly, and said, calm, almost gentle, "Ellie's isn't just a restaurant. It's a mirror. This morning I want everyone to take a look and really see who's staring back." With that, he pushed through the door and disappeared into the kitchen, leaving behind a silence, not of fear, but of a change beginning, like the first breath of wind before dawn entirely breaks. "I would love this." The staff was still. Marcus stood in the kitchen, where the once white tiles had long turned amber with grease and time. He placed his palm flat on the cold steel counter, the same surface where, 10 years ago, he had grilled the first racks of ribs with his 2 hands. The familiar hum of the fryer, the rhythmic clatter of knives on the cutting board, the soft whirl of the exhaust fan, all of it spoke to him in an old, intimate language. "We're still here. You just stopped listening." Behind him, Reggie stepped in, his broad hands still dusted with flour. He said nothing at first, only stood beside Marcus, 2 men sharing a silence that didn't need words. One had watched this place rise from smoke and sweat. The other had nearly lost it by forgetting the fire that built it. Finally, Reggie broke the silence. "Boss, I knew you were outside yesterday." Marcus looked up. "You knew?" Reggie nodded. "I heard footsteps. The others didn't notice, but I knew the way you stand. Same as the day you hired me. When you waited for me to finish that first batch of ribs before saying, 'You're in.'" Marcus let out a faint smile, heavier than a sigh. "Then you also heard what they said." "Heard every word," Reggie replied, voice rough. "But I also heard the exhaustion in it. They're not bad people, boss. They're just lost. When the one who leads disappears, the ones who follow start walking in circles." Marcus nodded slowly. "I know, and that's on me. I left thinking I was empowering people, but really, I just left an empty space." Reggie placed a calloused hand on Marcus's shoulder. Heavy, steady, warm. "Doesn't matter. What matters is you came back." Marcus said nothing, just squeezed Reggie's shoulder. A quiet thank you. Then he turned toward the kitchen door and looked out. The staff still hadn't dispersed. Some were glancing up at the framed photo of Ellie on the wall, as if noticing it for the first time. Marina stood with her head down, nervously twisting the lid of her plastic cup until it bent out of shape. Busy that Ellie's was just a name. Marcus replied softly, "And you believed it?" She nodded, "Because no one showed up to prove otherwise." Marcus was quiet for a moment, then exhaled. "Then let today be proof. I'm here. I'm not disappearing again. I don't need apologies. I need action. I want to see how you treat each other, the customers, and this name, as if it's worthy of Ellie's faith in us." Reggie smiled faintly, arms folded. "If you keep talking like that, boss, this place will shine again soon enough." Marcus turned to him. "I'll need your help. I can't do this alone. I want you to retrain them, not just how to cook, but also how to carry themselves, like you used to." Reggie nodded, eyes warm. "Always ready." When Marcus finished speaking, something in the air shifted. Not applause, not cheers, just the deep, weighted silence of people absorbing what they'd heard, like dry earth drinking the first drop of rain after a long drought. Marcus took a steady breath. "We open in 30 minutes. If you're staying, prove it by doing things right. I don't need perfection, just honesty." He turned to head back toward the kitchen, but paused beside Marina. His voice softened. "If you want to make things right, start with the first customer who walks in. Look them in the eye and smile. For real." Marina nodded slightly, lips trembling. As Marcus disappeared into the kitchen, Kendall glanced around, pulled the earbuds from his pocket and said quietly, "I'll wipe down the tables." Tiana smiled. "Good, I'll help." The air changed, slowly but unmistakably. Chairs slid, dishes clinked, footsteps moved with purpose. For the first time in a long while, the small noises of Ellie's grill sounded like rhythm again, like life returning. Marcus washed his hands, tied his apron inside the kitchen, and stood beside Reggie. "What's the special today?" he asked. Reggie smirked. "Fried catfish and corn." The morning's first customer was a weary-looking middle-aged man, fresh off a night shift. His rolled-up work shirt still carried the faint smell of gasoline. Marina glanced at him, slightly nervous at first, then steadied herself and offered a soft smile. "Good morning. What can I get you today, sir?" The man looked surprised, perhaps not used to such warmth in a place that used to feel cold. One catfish combo and a sweet tea," he replied, gravelly. "Yes, sir. Coming right up," Marina said quickly, tapping the screen. For the first time in months, she didn't swallow the phrase, "next." From the kitchen doorway, Marcus watched in silence. Her tone wasn't perfect yet, the smile a little stiff, her eyes not entirely at ease, but it was a start. He knew that to change a culture, sometimes all it took was one well-timed greeting. Reggie, flipping fish in the pan, murmured with a grin, "You see that, boss? Miss Ellie's probably smiling somewhere right now." Marcus replied quietly, "I hope so. But we've got a long way to go, Reggie. One good greeting doesn't save a house, but it lays the first brick." The smell of golden catfish spread through the kitchen, mixing with the sweet scent of fresh cornbread. The hiss of oil, the chop of knives, the opening and closing of the front door blended into a kind of music Marcus hadn't heard in a long time. By noon, Ellie's grill was buzzing again. A line of customers stretched toward the door, regulars and new faces alike. Tiana weaved gracefully between tables, cracking jokes that drew bursts of laughter. Charisse carried dishes from the kitchen, her laughter ringing whenever someone complimented the food. Marcus stood by the coffee counter, notebook in hand. He wasn't giving orders. He wasn't inspecting. He was listening to every small sign of life. A genuine smile, a customer saying, "Thank you," instead of complaining. A hello, where silence used to live. Each sound was like a heartbeat, proof that Ellie's grill was alive again. Then the door opened. A young man wearing a faded gray hoodie, clutching a crumpled "Mr. Hill," she began, but he raised a hand gently. "Do you know who that young man is?" She shook her head. "No, sir." "His name is Isaiah Penn," Marcus said evenly. "Last week I accepted him into our outreach program. He used to sleep on the streets. Today's the first time he's ever come here to buy a meal." with money he earned. The room went still. Marina lowered her gaze, eyes glistening. He's not one of those shelter kids, Marina. He's why this place exists. Just like Reggie, just like you, just like me. This is Ellie's, a place where people can start again. Marina bit her lip, voice trembling. I'm sorry. I didn't know. No need to say it, Marcus replied. Show it. With the next 10 customers you serve. He turned and walked away. No one spoke. Only the soft chime of the door sounded as Isaiah picked up his order and left. Reggie gave him a gentle fist bump. Keep going, kid. Isaiah smiled widely and nodded. Watching him go, Tiana whispered, Maybe Miss Ellie really is watching. Marcus nodded, his eyes glinting. And I think she's smiling. That afternoon, Ellie's grill felt alive again. Conversation hummed, dishes clinked, and laughter rippled across tables. No one stood idle. No one looked down. They worked, and they cared. Marcus sat at his old corner table by the window, the one he'd used back when the restaurant was still small. He opened his notebook and wrote, Culture doesn't die. It just sleeps when no one stays awake with it. Sunlight streamed through the glass, casting a warm glow on his face. For the first time in years, Marcus Hill felt peace. Not because everything was perfect, but because he knew the soul of Ellie's was beating again. Through the window he could see Reggie showing Kendall how to flip the fish, Marina carefully wiping down the counter, and Tiana delivering a dish with a joke that made the whole table laugh. Marcus smiled to himself. Maybe, he thought, this is what redemption sounds like. Not words, but the rhythm of life returning. That afternoon, as the last rays of sunlight glimmered off the oil-streaked windows, Ellie's grill fell into a strange quiet. No more clinking silverware, no more coffee being poured. Only the lingering aroma of lunch, smoky, sweet, and slightly spicy, hung in the air like a memory that refused to fade. Marcus sat alone at the small table by the window, the same one where he used to sit with Grandma Ellie years ago when the restaurant was just a tiny wooden house on the roadside. She'd sit across from him, stirring her tea, watching customers come and go as she said, You know, Marcus, a restaurant doesn't live on money. It lives in the hearts of the people in the kitchen. And when that heart stops beating, no sign, no lighting, no decor can keep it alive. Marcus pressed his lips together. After everything that had happened, he finally understood what she'd meant. The kitchen door swung open. Reggie walked out, wiping his hands on the white towel tucked into his apron. Boss, he said, lunch rush is done. Not a bad day, huh? Marcus looked up and smiled softly. Better than I expected. Reggie chuckled, his white teeth gleaming against his sun-browned skin. See? No miracles needed. Just people finally listening again. Marcus nodded and gestured for him to sit. Through the window they watched Kendall scrubbing the counter, Marina gathering trash, Tiana placing small vases of flowers on each table, and Charisse wrapping up leftover food to take out back. No one said much, but every movement carried intention. Quiet, genuine effort. Reggie, Marcus said after a moment, you've been here the longest. If you ever see me drift again, promise you'll pull me back. Reggie laughed, shaking his head. Nah, you learn fast, boss. It's like smoking ribs. You gotta burn one batch before you figure out the fire. Marcus laughed too. Then his gaze drifted toward Marina, who was wiping the counter with her head bowed. He stood and walked over. She stiffened, thinking he might scold her. But Marcus only said quietly, Thank you for today. I saw you trying. Marina looked up, eyes tone softening. Tomorrow morning, I want to hear from each of you what Ellie means to you. It doesn't have to be long, just honest. No one objected. They all nodded. Maybe they didn't fully understand what he meant yet, but they could feel that something was shifting. As everyone began to leave, Kendall was the last to go. He hesitated at the door, then turned back. Mr. Hill, I was stupid yesterday. I talked too much, thought too little. I don't want to lose this place. Marcus studied him, not with anger, but with the quiet gaze of a man watching someone grow. Nobody's born knowing better, Kendall. What matters is that you stopped and saw it. Now prove it, not for me, but for yourself. Kendall nodded and slipped out, closing the door so softly it made no sound. Night settled in. Only the dim light above the counter and the hum of the ventilation fan remained. Marcus stood alone in the middle of the room, looking again at Grandma Ellie's photo. Her face was as gentle as ever. Her eyes in the picture almost seemed to smile. He whispered, I almost lost everything, Grandma. But today, I think I heard this place's heartbeat again. He smiled faintly, then stepped outside. The sky had darkened. Ellie's grill sign still flickered, the first E half dead, sputtering with weak light. Marcus didn't plan to fix it. He liked it that way, imperfect, a reminder that beauty lives in things still learning to grow. Leaning against his truck, he looked up at the scattered Georgia stars, breathing in the faint scent of barbecue that lingered in the night air. Everything felt still. There was no sound but the steady rhythm of his heart and the soft chorus of crickets from the grass. In that moment, Marcus understood. Sometimes the greatest gift isn't keeping the light alive. It's finding the courage to relight it. He smiled and whispered, Thank you, Ellie. Tomorrow, we water the garden again. He climbed into the truck and turned the key. The headlights washed over the restaurant front, and for a brief second the sign Ellie's Grill shone bright and whole again, before fading back into the quiet of the night. Behind him, the next morning the Georgia sun rose earlier than usual, spilling soft gold light through the dewy trees and resting on the flickering sign of Ellie's Grill. It was a gentle kind of light, not harsh, not loud, that felt like forgiveness, like a quiet new beginning. Marcus Hill arrived before anyone else, 6:30 a.m. Inside, the diner was still. Only the faint hum of the refrigerator and the lingering scent of yesterday's oil filled the air. Marcus switched on the lights, unlatched the windows, and let the morning breeze flow in, carrying the smell of damp grass and coffee from the cafe across the street. He hung his old apron, gray and worn, a small burn mark at the edge, the relic of the nights when he used to cook until midnight, hands blistered but proud. On the center table he placed 2 freshly printed folders, one blue, one white. On the covers, handwritten titles, Stayed and Build, Nova Forward. No signatures, no speeches, just 2 choices, 2 truths. By 7, Reggie came in first. He grinned when he saw Marcus wiping down the counter. Told you, he chuckled. When the boss shows up first every day, nobody else dares to be late. Marcus smiled softly. Not here to keep score, Reggie. I just want this place to wake up with me. Reggie laughed. Sounds like something Ellie would have said. One by one the others arrived. Charisse brought a box of warm cornbread. Tiana walked in with her knitted beanie and a bright grin. Kendall and Marina came last, quiet, but no longer avoiding Marcus's eyes. When everyone had gathered, Marcus clapped once, the sound sharp and calm. Before we start today, I have 2 things to say, and 2 things to give. He held up the folders. One is for those who believe Ellie's still means something, who want to stay and rebuild its heart. The other is for those ready to leave, no shame, resentment, or honesty. If you choose to go, you'll receive 2 weeks' pay and a letter of recommendation. I keep my word. The room fell quiet. No tension, just the weight of a real choice. Marcus set the folders on the counter. You don't have to decide now. Work today. Then coffee for his staff, something he'd never done before. By noon, after the last customer left, Marcus gathered them again. Before you eat, he said, I want to hear what I asked yesterday. What does Ellie's mean to you? No one spoke at first. Then Reggie broke the silence. Ellie's is where I learned how to be trusted again. You gave me a chance when no one else would. I've messed up plenty, but this place taught me to keep my word. Like smoking ribs, you gotta tend the fire steady, never walk away. Marcus nodded, turning to Tiana. She smiled. To me, Ellie's is my second family. Folks come here because they're hungry but leave because they feel cared for. Charisse added, It's a lesson. Every dish here starts as a mistake, but only those patients are enough to fix it and make it right. The warmth in the room deepened. Then Marina spoke, her voice low but steady. To me, Ellie's used to just being a job. I didn't care about anything but the paycheck. But yesterday, when you talked about Isaiah, that boy, I felt ashamed. I made people feel small, the same way I was once made to feel small. I want to stay, not to make it up to you, but to make it up to myself. Marcus's eyes softened. Thank you, Marina. You just said the most important thing anyone could today. Kendall inhaled deeply before speaking. Me too. I used to think respect was something fancy, something for other people. But this morning, when a customer called me sir, I realized it wasn't about status, but how I treated them first. I want to keep that feeling. Marcus smiled, letting a quiet pause settle before replying. Ellie's got its soul back, not because I came back, but because you all finally started seeing each other again. He glanced at the clock. By evening, before we close, I'll need everyone's signature, not in a rush, but only when you want to stay. I won't hold anyone back, but if you stay, we rebuild together. The afternoon drifted by softly. The sky turned orange, sunlight cutting through the window and catching the dust. See. Marcus shook his head gently. You don't have to make me see, son. Make yourself believe. As the sun dipped, the diner filled with the scent of warm cornbread, faint smoke, and a new kind of peace. Marcus turned off the lights one by one, leaving only the small bulb above Grandma Ellie's photo. He touched the wooden frame and whispered, Grandma, the garden has someone watering it again. Outside, the Ellie's grill sign still flickered, imperfect, stubborn, alive. But inside, the light burned brighter than ever. No longer just a restaurant that had lost its way, but a home. A place where people, once adrift, were learning again to see each other, to greet each other, and to believe in something good. Night fell slowly over Decatur Street, car lights mixing with the amber glow of old storefront signs. But the light spilling from Ellie's grill was different. No longer the cold glare of fluorescent tubes, but the warm hue of something reborn. Marcus Hill stood at the doorway, keys in hand, watching the flicker of the half-lit sign. He didn't turn the lights off right away. Inside, Reggie was wiping down the stove. Kendall was rinsing dishes, and Tiana was taking out the trash. No one said it, but no one wanted to leave just yet, as if breaking the stillness would also break the fragile peace that filled the room. All right, Marcus called out, voice mingling with running water. "Good work today. Tomorrow we start a new chapter. Go home. Get some rest." Reggie tossed his towel into the basket and grinned. "Boss, I've worked here more than 10 years, but this is the first night I want to come back tomorrow." Kendall smiled sheepishly. "Me too." Marcus nodded, his voice low but warm. "That's all I ask. Not perfection, just honesty." Marcus lingered under the dim counterlight when the last of them left. He cleared the glasses, straightened the chairs, and walked toward the back wall. As always, Grandma Ellie's photo hung there, her gentle smile seeming to watch over the diner. He brushed his fingers along the frame and whispered, "We're not perfect yet, Grandma, but I think you'd be proud." A cool breeze slipped through the door's edge, swaying the curtain, and in that quiet second Marcus could have sworn he heard her voice, soft as breath. "Don't be afraid to begin again, son. Anything with a heart just needs one believer to stay alive." He closed his eyes and let the kitchen scent drift around him. Smoke, cornbread, and grilled bread all folding into memory. The next morning Marcus came early as usual, but this time he wasn't alone. The young man from the Shelter Path program, Isaiah Penn, stood outside holding an old fabric cap. Am I too early, Mr. Hill?" Marcus smiled. "No, being early's a good habit. Come on, I'll show you how to light the gas safely." The two stepped inside together, the door placing a hand on her shoulder. "We've missed you." "And I've missed this feeling," she said. "Everywhere else, they serve people. Here, they care about them." The words stopped Marcus cold, because that was precisely what he had written in the very first notebook of Ellie's Grill. "We don't sell food. We serve kindness." By noon, the diner was packed, busier than it had been in years. Rumors about the change spread fast. People came not just to eat, but also to see how the vanished owner had returned. Marcus didn't care. He wasn't in the office anymore. He poured coffee, carried plates, laughed with customers, and asked about their families. When he set down a plate of cornbread, a little girl tugged his sleeve. "Mister, are you the boss?" Marcus crouched down, smiling. "Yeah, but don't tell anyone, okay? I'm just someone who likes to cook." The girl giggled. "I like it here. It smells like home." He looked up and caught Tiana watching from across the room. She nodded, smiling. "See, boss? Ellie's is alive again." Marcus nodded back. "Not just alive. It's growing." That afternoon, after the rush had passed, Kendall approached him. His hands were still wet from the sink. "I used to think you'd fire me that first day," he said quietly. "But you didn't." "If I had," Marcus replied, "I'd have missed the chance to watch you get it right. Ellie's was never built to throw people away." Kendall chuckled, nodding. "I get it now. Respect isn't something you demand, it's something you build." Marcus placed a hand on his shoulder. "Exactly. And today, you started building." Later that evening, as they cleaned up, Charisse handed Marcus a folded note. "A customer left this." Marcus opened it. The handwriting was slightly tilted, written in blue ink. "I've eaten at Ellie's since the day it opened. There was a time I thought this place was gone. But today, when I walked in, I could hear Miss Ellie's voice in every dish. Thank you for bringing her back." His chest tightened. Again, after all its mistakes. And somewhere, if her spirit still lingered, Ellie Mae Hill might have been smiling. whispering through the Georgia night. Well done, Marcus. They've remembered that a kitchen doesn't live by fire, but by heart. And under the soft glow of Decatur's worn-out street signs, the little diner called Ellie's Grill lived again, not because of a new menu, but because the people inside had learned once more to see one another, to care, and to believe that sometimes all it takes is one person coming back to change the whole world. That night, Marcus didn't drive straight home. He circled the neighborhood, the same streets he'd sped through for years with his mind full of numbers and plans. Contracts, branches, revenue targets, meetings that made him forget why he'd started all this in the first place. Now, everything was quiet. The little storefronts were dark, save for a few dim lamps casting gold on the wet pavement. Each time he passed Ellie's Grill, Marcus glanced at the flickering sign, and each time warmth stirred in his chest, as if the place itself were breathing, waiting for him to return each morning. He parked by the nearby park and sat silently, watching the moonlight shimmer across the lake's surface. Then he heard her voice again, Grandma Ellie's, clear as if she were sitting right beside him. Son, you can't grow a dream if you only watch it from afar. You have to touch the soil. You have to know the smell of its sweat. Marcus smiled faintly. I understand now, Grandma. He leaned back, closed his eyes. He felt peace for the first time in years, not because everything was perfect, but because he was finally present. The next morning, sunlight spread across Decatur, transparent as glass. Ellie's Grill opened early. The bell over the door chimed softly and the scent of brewing coffee filled the air. Kendall was the first to arrive. He nodded and smiled, a little shy. Morning, Mr. Hill. Better than ever, Marcus replied, smiling back. Keep that spirit going through the day. Yes, sir, I will. Soon after came Reggie, Tiana, and then Charisse. They weren't there out of fear of inspection. They came because they wanted to. The chatter in the diner was soft, steady, not noisy but full of life. A little later, Isaiah walked in wearing a neatly pressed pale blue shirt. He had just started a new job cleaning buses, but stopped by before work to buy breakfast. I just wanted to thank you all, he said sincerely. It's the first time I've felt like someone truly believes in me. Marcus smiled. We don't believe with words, Isaiah. We believe with action. And today, you're proving that. Leaving moved. Maybe kindness never disappeared. We just stopped looking hard enough. Reggie read the note and laughed. See, boss? Good rumors travel just as fast as bad ones. Marcus nodded. The difference is, good ones need someone to keep them alive. Bad ones just need someone to let them go. That afternoon, when the crowd thinned, Marcus walked into the kitchen. The place gleamed. He looked around and said quietly, Thank you. Not just for the work, but for the spirit today. Charisse looked up. Mr. Hill, you seem happier than usual. Marcus smiled, eyes bright. Because today I saw something money can't buy. People. The room burst into soft laughter. Reggie laid a heavy, warm hand on his shoulder. Boss, I swear Miss Ellie's probably dancing in her kitchen up there. Marcus laughed, voice rough with emotion. If she were here, she'd scold me. You let the garden dry too long, boy. Reggie nodded, serious now. But you watered it again, and we'll keep it green with you. As the day ended, Marcus sat by the window watching the sun's last light stretch across the tables, turning each drifting speck of dust into gold. He pulled a worn piece of paper from his pocket, a note Grandma Ellie had written him years before she passed. If one day you find the diner empty, don't blame the wind. Ask yourself if you've kept the fire lit. He placed it on the table, studied it for a long while, then smiled. I've lit it again, Grandma. That night, as he locked up, Marcus paused by the door. Kendall waved goodbye. Isaiah stopped by to wave too. Reggie, before leaving, turned and said, Boss, tomorrow I'll bring paint. We'll fix that broken E on the sign. Marcus shook his head, smiling. No need. Leave it that way. It reminds us that beauty lives where there's still room to mend. Reggie nodded knowingly. Then we'll keep it. One faded E, but one shining soul. Marcus looked up at the sign before switching off the lights. In the dark, the neon letters still flickered faintly, like a weary heart, but one that refused to stop beating. He whispered, voice low and steady. We're not.
A week later, Decatur welcomed the first autumn morning of the year. The air was cooler, carrying the scent of dry leaves and kitchen smoke from nearby homes. On Peachtree Avenue, commuters rushed past, but on the quiet corner where Ellie's grill stood, life moved more slowly, warmer, and more enduring. Marcus Hill unlocked the diner at 6:30. As the light poured in, dust motes danced in the air, glittering like tiny threads of gold. He inhaled deeply, letting the scent of coffee and cornbread mix in his chest. Good morning, Ellie, he whispered. Behind him, Reggie stepped in with a bag of cornmeal in hand, his deep voice rumbling through the quiet. Boss, how about we make peach cobbler the old way today? Marcus turned, a faint smile crossing his face. Like she used to. Reggie nodded, pouring flour into a bowl. Exactly, but no extra sugar. The sweetness has to come from the heart of the cook. Marcus chuckled. Ellie taught you that one? Reggie grinned widely. Nope, you did, 10 years ago. One by one, the others arrived. Tiana brought fresh flowers to place on each table. Kendall tied on his apron and poured coffee for everyone, and Charisse checked the menu. No one needed reminders. No one rushed. Everything moved in rhythm, like a song that didn't need a conductor. A few minutes later, the door opened. Isaiah Penn walked in. This time he wasn't shy. His jacket was clean, his hair trimmed, his face bright. Morning, everyone, he called out cheerfully. I've got good news. Marcus stepped out from behind the counter. What's that, Isaiah? The young man beamed. I got hired full-time at the bus depot, and I want to treat everyone to breakfast. My treat. The room burst into applause and laughter. Marcus looked at the boy, a wave of pride and gratitude rising in his chest. That rare, peaceful joy. Then breakfast today's on you, huh? But Isaiah, Marcus smiled. Let me pick the dish. I owe you the best cornbread in Georgia. While Charisse baked and Tiana poured coffee, Marcus sat across from Isaiah. You know, he unfolded it later. It read, I was a waitress for 25 years. Today, when I stepped into this place, I remembered what it feels like to be respected. Thank you for keeping that alive. He folded the note gently and slipped it into his shirt pocket, with the other handwritten ones he'd been collecting. They weren't awards, but meant more than any trophy ever could. By afternoon, Kendall approached Marcus with a trim paint can in hand. Boss, I know you didn't want to fix the letter E on the sign, but I was thinking, instead of replacing the whole neon, we could just brush around the edges, not erase it, just brighten it a bit. Marcus looked at him for a long moment, then smiled. Good idea, Kendall. Keep the cracks, but add light. That's how people change too. Not by forgetting who they were, but by shining through it. Kendall nodded, carried a ladder outside, and began painting carefully around the old letter. When he finished, the glow wasn't perfect, but steady, bright enough to be seen, soft enough to remember it had once been dim. Reggie came out, arms folded. "Beautiful! That sign tells a better story than our whole menu." Marcus squinted up, smiling. "Because it doesn't speak in words. It speaks in memory." As the sun set, the sky turned amber. Everyone sat down together, not as workers, but as family. They shared Cherise's peach cobbler, crisp crust, soft filling, a gentle sweetness that lingered like nostalgia. The smell filled the diner. Marcus looked around at their faces, Reggie's kind smile, Tiana laughing mid-story, Kendall eating quietly but content, Isaiah sitting beside her, shy but glowing, Cherise laughing bright and free. He spoke softly, voice almost blending with the clinking spoons. "You know, I used to think Ellie's was just a business. But now I know. It's a reminder that without caring for the culture, all we have left is brick and wood." Reggie nodded thoughtfully. "Culture's like cooking, boss. Nobody makes a good meal without tasting it often." Marcus laughed. "You're right. And I think it's time." Sunday morning in Decatur was still and quiet. Dew clung to the fences, and sparrows chirped along the power lines as if the world was slowly starting over, gentle, unhurried. While most shops were still shuttered, Ellie's grill was already open. The smell of freshly baked cornbread and roasted coffee drifted down the street, carried by the morning breeze, making passers-by stop for a moment and breathe deeply. Inside, Marcus Hill stood behind the counter, a stainless steel pot of coffee in hand, pouring cups one by one for customers. He no longer looked like the stern owner he once was. He was simply part of this place, part of its rhythm and pulse. "Careful, it's hot, Mr. Williams," he said, a smile flickering on his lips. The silver-haired man chuckled. "You remember my name again. Good. You're starting to sound more like Ellie every day." Marcus laughed softly, a knot of emotion tightening in his chest. "I'm trying, sir, though I'll never quite be her." The morning flowed on in warm, steady motion. Tiana moved gracefully between tables, greeting customers as though welcoming family. Cherise carried trays of steaming pastries. Reggie hummed an old Otis Redding tune as he cooked. Even Kendall, the young man who once hid behind his headphones and sighed through shifts, was laughing now, teasing a little boy who demanded more ketchup. No one barked orders, no one rushed. Everything moved like a song everyone already knew by heart. In the corner, Isaiah wiped tables, his shirt dusted with flour, his smile so bright it made others forget their fatigue. He greeted each customer with honest eyes, not because he was told to, but because he belonged here. Marcus watched him, and in that boy's posture and sincerity, he saw a younger version of himself, 20 years old, nervous but determined, working beside Grandma Ellie in a cramped kitchen, believing that one kind word could make the whole world feel bigger. By late morning, the diner grew busier than usual. A convoy of cars parked outside, visitors from a nearby town who'd heard about the restaurant that found its soul. They entered with curiosity, but something about the air softened them once seated. A young mother with her retreated to the back room when the crowd thinned and opened his notebook. Under the title, Ellie's Journal, he added a new line. "True change isn't found in a menu, but in a gaze. A greeting, a smile, a handshake, small gestures that rebuild the foundation." He closed the notebook and listened. From outside came Reggie's deep laugh mingled with Kendall's playful shout. "Cherise, don't you dare hide that last piece of cobbler!" The room erupted in laughter.
It was the sound Marcus once feared he'd never hear again, the sound of a place with a soul. That night, the diner closed late. Before leaving, Marcus turned off the lights one by one, leaving only the soft yellow glow above Ellie's photograph. He stood alone in the stillness, his hand brushing lightly against the frame. "Grandma," he whispered, "everything's back. Not the same, but better. Because now, each of us carries a piece of you in our hearts." Outside, the neon sign flickered, its letter E still imperfect, one corner dim. But that imperfection made it real, human, alive. The night breeze stirred the sign gently. Marcus smiled, turned the key, and locked the door. Before walking away, he glanced back one last time. The faint glow from the broken E reflected off the glass where he saw not just his own reflection, but the faces of those he cherished. Reggie, Tiana, Kendall, Isaiah, Charisse, all smiling, busy, alive. And in that instant, Marcus understood. A legacy doesn't live in walls or names. It lives in people who keep the flame of humanity burning, no matter how small. He whispered, like a prayer carried to the night sky, "Grandma, your garden's green again." Then he turned away, walking into the quiet Decatur evening, where every small act of kindness, no matter how simple, could still light up an entire street. A month had passed since Marcus Hill returned to Ellie's Grill, and the most miraculous thing wasn't the revenue or the number of customers. It was the way people spoke about the place. No one called it an old diner brought back to life anymore. They called it a place that makes you feel like you matter. The local paper ran a short piece with a simple headline, "From Lost to Reborn, a small diner reminds us of the power of kindness." Marcus didn't grant any interviews. He didn't want to turn it into a PR story. He simply framed the article and hung it near the counter right beneath the chalk-written words Ellie herself had once scrawled on the wall. "Here, everyone deserves to be seen with kindness." That morning, Decatur was cold. A fine drizzle hung in the air, coating the windows in a thin mist. But inside the diner, warmth ruled. The oven glowed red, sending the sweet scent of honey and cornbread. Kendall walked in, jacket soaked but smiling. "Boss, I came early today to help Reggie start the stove." Marcus looked at him and nodded gently. "Good. You don't have to say it. I see it." From the back, Reggie called out, laughing, "Watch out, that kid might set all of Georgia on fire." The diner burst into laughter. Kendall shot back, "If it does, I'll feed the whole state for free." The sound of laughter filled the air, warm, genuine, effortless. Joy had become a habit. Around noon, something unexpected happened. A tall, middle-aged man in a gray suit entered. His presence was sharp, authoritative. "Excuse me," he said, his tone firm. "Who's the owner here?" Marcus stepped forward calmly. "That would be me." The man handed him a business card. "Samuel Price, Regional Inspector. I received a few complaints months ago. I'm here for a follow-up visit." The whole diner went still for a moment. Kendall froze. Tiana glanced at Marcus, but Marcus didn't flinch. "Thank you for coming, Mr. Price. Please, have a meal. Observe as a guest, not a judge." Price sat near the window. He watched everything, the way Reggie cooked, Tiana served, and customers talked and smiled. No one pretended to get into a tiny green leaf sprouting from the gap. Tiana looked up. "You let him do that?" Marcus nodded. "I did, because it's right. Sometimes the cracks are where new things grow. Reggie chuckled. That's pure Marcus Hill philosophy right there. Everyone laughed, the sound spilling out into the street, blending with the soft glow of evening. Marcus sat at his usual table after the last customer left that night. He opened his notebook and wrote, "Fixing a restaurant is easy. Fixing its soul is hard. But when you start listening, that soul will tell you how to save it." He closed the notebook, stood up, and took one last look around. The polished wooden tables, the small curtains, the brick red walls, the golden light reflecting off Ellie's framed photo. He knew then that Ellie's grill wasn't just alive again. It was teaching him, and everyone who walked through its doors, how to love their work, their people, and themselves once more. When he locked the door that night, Marcus looked back through the window. The neon sign still glowed, faint but steady, reflecting his silhouette. Behind him, Ellie's old words seemed to whisper from the chalkboard. Don't cook with your hands. Cook with your heart. Marcus nodded softly and stepped into the Decatur night. Headlights from passing cars painted his face in shades of gold, tired but peaceful. In his heart, he knew, some things don't need to be perfect to be beautiful. They just need to be true and still alive. And so, the story of a man who once lost himself in his own dream found its quiet ending, not through power, not through wealth, but through the courage to return to where it all began. A small diner, an old sign, a soul reignited by the kindness of human hearts. A winter morning settled quietly over Decatur. The street before Ellie's grill lay under a thin veil of silver fog, the diner's faded green and gold sign flickering softly like a memory that refused to fade. Inside, the lights were already on. The faint clatter of knives and chopping boards mingled with the low hum of "A Change Is Gonna Come" playing on the radio, and the air was rich with the scent of batter, coffee, and warmth. Marcus Hill had been there since 5. He no longer sat in the back office. Every morning he started in the kitchen, wiping counters, tasting the sauce, brewing the first pot of coffee. Not because he had to, but because he wanted to feel the soul of the place again, with his own hands. Reggie came in, coat damp with dew, clapping a heavy hand on Marcus's shoulder. "Cold morning like this and you still beat me here, boss?" Marcus smiled. "Just keeping up with Ellie's old rule. She used to say, if you want others to feel warm, you've got to light the fire first." Reggie nodded, eyes gleaming. "Now I get why this place never really went dark." By 7, the rest of the team arrived. Tiana brought fresh flowers from the morning market. Kendall carried a milk crate. Charisse hummed softly as she laid out the tablecloths. Each person moved at their own rhythm, yet together they formed one steady heartbeat. People proud of where they belonged. At 8, the door opened and a gust of cold wind swept in along with the first guests. A grandmother, a young mother, and a little girl with pigtails and curious eyes. "Good morning, sweethearts," Tiana said, her voice warm as sunlight. "Sit anywhere you like. Today good kids get free muffins." The girl giggled, the grandmother nodded in gratitude. None of them knew that she was once Ellie's old neighbor, the woman who helped sell her first loaves of bread back in 1982. From across the room, Marcus watched, his chest tightening with emotion. That small act, kindness that needed no training, care that required no handbook, was what he had once feared was gone. By midday, the diner was packed. Regulars, newcomers, and even travelers from other states came after reading an article titled, "Ellie's Grill, the diner that found its soul again everywhere." Marcus's breath caught. "You knew her?" The man nodded.
She gave me a meal once when I lost my job. I never forgot it. Today, thank you for bringing her back." When he left, Marcus stood still for a long time. Outside, the sunlight began to burn through the fog, and the sign above the door glowed brighter than ever. That evening, after closing, the whole team stayed behind for dinner together. Reggie brewed ginger tea. Tiana brought extra pie. Kendall cleared the tables. No one gave orders. No one played the boss. Charisse raised her cup. "We should do this more often. Ellie's family dinner." Marcus smiled. "Agreed. But before that, I need to say something." Everyone turned toward him. He took a slow breath, his voice steady but deep. "Last month, I thought I was fixing a restaurant. Now I realize the restaurant has been fixing me." For a moment, no one spoke. Only the soft patter of rain against the window filled the silence. Then Reggie nodded, his voice low and rough. "Boss, Miss Ellie's smiling somewhere right now. She always said, when a place is built from love, it heals itself." Marcus looked around at them, every face, every story, every mistake and second chance. Together, they were Ellie's living soul. "She's not far away, Reggie," he said quietly. "She's right here, in every single one of you." When the others finally left, Marcus lingered alone. He stepped outside, staring up at the sign. The letter E, that imperfect symbol of what was once broken, now glowed with unusual light. A cold wind drifted by, carrying the faint scent of caramelized sugar and wood smoke. He closed his eyes, and in the hush of memory, heard her voice again. "If you want a place to live forever, don't just build walls. Build people." Marcus opened his eyes, nodded, and walked back inside. The kitchen lights shimmered over Ellie's old photo. Her smile as kind. Spring in Decatur. Spring arrived in Decatur, and the city came alive. Magnolia trees bloomed wide along the boulevard, sparrows sang on tin rooftops, and the door chime of Ellie's grill rang in steady rhythm, like a heartbeat. People didn't just come here for breakfast anymore. They came to reconnect, tell stories, and remember something they'd once lost. On one newly painted wall hung a sign that read, "The Wall of Second Chances." Pinned to it were dozens of Polaroid photos. A man who had once been homeless is now running his own auto shop. A young woman who had waited tables is now training to be a chef. A boy who once trembled asking for a job, now the most beloved employee on staff. All these small stories hung there quietly, no bragging, no fanfare. At the center was a handwritten note from Marcus Hill. "Ellie believed anyone can start again, as long as someone believes first." Every guest who came in stopped for a moment at that wall. Some smiled, some fell silent, some wiped away tears. One day, a small truck stopped in front of the diner. A woman with silver hair stepped out carrying a bouquet of magnolias. She walked straight inside and asked softly, "Is the owner here? Marcus Hill?" Marcus came out, recognizing her instantly. Mrs. Gladys Monroe, Ellie's old neighbor. "Good heavens," he said, eyes widening. "I didn't think you'd still remember me." She smiled kindly. "I don't just remember you, Marcus. I remember how Ellie always said you'd keep your light, no matter how far you wandered."
Marcus was quiet for a moment before replying, "I thought I'd lost it, ma'am." Mrs. Gladys set the bouquet on the counter, her gaze warm. "No, you didn't lose it. You just forgot for a while. The light people like Ellie carry, it never goes out. It only waits for the right person to kindle it again." That evening, after closing, Marcus sat alone in the quiet diner. A spring drizzle fell outside, mirroring the neon reflections across the wet pavement. He took out a folded note he kept in his wallet, a letter glistening. Sometimes what needs fixing isn't the light, it's the people who keep it burning. Reggie's voice trembled as he patted Marcus's shoulder. "Then Miss Ellie can finally rest easy, huh, boss?" Marcus shook his head gently. "No, Reggie, she's not resting. She's still here, in every wisp of smoke, every laugh, every person who's been given a second chance." When the last light was turned off, Marcus stepped outside and took a long breath. The night breeze carried the scent of baked cornbread mixed with magnolia blossoms. He looked up at the Ellie's Grill sign, now glowing steady and strong, a small beacon in the city night. He spoke quietly, almost to himself. Or to Ellie. Or to anyone who still believed kindness had a place in this world. "Ellie, I kept my promise." Then he locked the door and stepped down the front steps, disappearing into the calm night of Decatur, where a single small light still burned, and a long-lost soul had finally found its way home. There was no spotlight, no miracle, just a man, a little diner, and an unshakable belief that if you pause long enough to listen truly, any place you once loved can live again. And so Ellie's Grill became a quiet symbol of something the world too often forgets. When people treat each other kindly, even the dimmest sign can shine again. As the diner's lights dimmed and the story drew to a close, perhaps you felt something, small but real, because somewhere out there, someone is still quietly rekindling the spirit of places the world thought were gone. If you believe that kindness, compassion, and second chances still matter, then you are already part of Deep Life Tales. We tell stories not just for you to watch, but for you to feel. Leave a comment if this story touched you. Hit like to help it reach someone who needs it, and subscribe to hear more true stories about humanity, compassion, and the quiet moments that warm the world. Because here at Deep Life Tales, every story